Oh my god, this movie literally made my childhood. Hey there, this is your math doodle with too much time on his hands. Doodle here with another video. And today, I want to talk about this glorious movie, the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. And I wanted to thank everyone who put it in this poll to talk about this trilogy first. This version of Spider-Man is literally my introduction to superheroes in its entirety. Literally everything I enjoy about it came from these movies. Now, are they the most faithful to the comics? No. Are they the most accurate to abilities? Not really. But these are what introduced me to this character and to the worlds of comic books. I'm going to show you how much I love this movie. Yes, I know this is the first one. I have it in this format. Yeah, it's weird because, it doesn't show anything, but it's because I lost it years ago. I had this when I was basically a baby. I have the DVD, everything like that. The original thing is, yes, I even had it in VHS format as a little wee baby child. That was the first one. Then I got the DVD. Then I later on got the full one, so it has all three because I love these series. And I just wanted to talk about the things I love about this movie. I can't be completely unbiased on the film because literally formed me into the person I am. Like, if I never watched this movie, I don't think I would ever really be into comics. But I will try to be as unbiased as physically possible. I will still talk about the things I like. Like, I'm going to show some fun facts about the movie. In the movie, his web shooters, like how in the movie he doesn't have web shooters, he has, organic webbing. That was the first time I ever saw that. See, as a kid, I just thought Spider-Man had organic webbing. And when you're that young, you think everything should be in that format of the movie. So when I got older and I realized Peter had, web shooters, that was the first time I was actually like, you know what? That actually makes more sense. Because even as a little kid, I was more like, hey, how do they have these abilities? How do the webs even work if they all come out of their butt, for spiders? So the web shooters made more sense to me, but I still enjoyed the organic webbing. And then even later on, comics would try to adapt that. But even in the movie, they try to show that he kind of has web shooters who are kind of going to be fake. It's weird. And the costume. Let's talk about the costume first. This costume somehow was able to be completely different from the original Spider-Man design while being the exact same, if that makes sense. And it's all because of bad technology, or the technology they had at the time. Because of the restriction of the blue screen, the webs on the suit wouldn't have popped. So instead, they made it rised up so it can pump out more, and that's why the eyes are the same way. And that's where we got the iconic silver webs. And I do want to say, throughout this film, this is going to weird people out because most people like the second version of the suit more. I actually prefer this version of the suit. You know why? Even though it looks impractical on how a freshman to college person would make this film, it felt more homey. It felt more, I guess, believable. It felt more, I don't know how to explain it besides homey, but that's what it felt like. So I prefer this one more. And I know that the reason why they made new ones later on is because the original ones got stolen and they really couldn't create it like that, so they, thought of updating it. And don't get me wrong, I understand that this movie can be cheesy to some people. But to me, that is the joy. That is the point of Spider-Man. Literally, the entire character of Spider-Man is cheesy. He quips, he makes fun of, he literally has a bright, colorful costume. And speaking of his costume, I didn't know this until years later, because in my mind, to a lot of people's minds, of the way this Peter got his abilities and then how he became Spider-Man was kind of shortened down. Because in the comics, he was actually, the wrestler part, right? But that was only a short time. He actually became a TV entertainer, kind of what a influencer is nowadays. But back then, and that's what the point of the costume. And I know they didn't really put it out there right here, but I like how it became a different message to make his costume, that he was already thinking about it, and that this Peter, Jesus, is an amazing artist. And also something that I love, because people keep saying that people who just love these movies don't like change, don't like how anything can be changed through the new films, with Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire, changes, right? You know why I say that's BS? Because in this movie, they change stuff about the origin. Uncle Ben, you know, his death was a pure accident. There was nothing beyond that. So, you know that whole scene where Peter and Uncle Ben talk in the car and, Peter just shrugs him off like he's not even his dad?
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Are you afraid that I'm going to turn into some kind of criminal?
And, the sucker punch of him dying hits harder. That's because of this movie. That's what introduced that it's Peter's fault, basically, or his lack of caring for Uncle Ben that caused his death and why he decided to be a hero than just, hey, my uncle died and yes, it is my fault, but that's why I should be a hero. This hits a lot harder. Even now, I know people joke about Tobey Maguire's acting with crying, but you know why I don't care about that? Because it's real. This is how a person would genuinely cry, not those one-tear versions of it. No, the ugly crying is more realistic, and it sucker punches more. Again, don't get me wrong, a lot of things can be cheesy, and some things can be out of date, like, the CGI doesn't always hold up, but even then, they hide it well enough to where it doesn't really affect it. Like in the scene where, he chases the guy to stop Uncle Ben's killer. Where it transfers him, as the human spider, which I love that design, and where it has Bruce Campbell basically call him Spider-Man, which was beautiful.
The sum of $3,000 will be paid to the terrifying, the deadly, the amazing Spider-Man!
It shows him, climb to the wall. Even then, I know the CGI is bad. Maybe because of the rose-tinted nostalgia goggles I have on, or nostalgia mask I have on, it doesn't, affect me too much. And it probably is because when I look at old games that I don't have nostalgia for, I just notice the bad CGI or things like graphics like that. So, I get it. I'm personally fine with it. And then, I know there's some jokes don't land well, like, the whole Peter fighting Bonesaw.
Staying away from you. That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?
I know it's wrong, but the reason why I'm not super, annoyed by it, I know it's like basically trying to be a homophobic joke, but in my mind, getting older, I don't think Peter would be like that. So in my mind, I think that he's just kind of saying, what if, who knows, maybe this guy does have a husband. I know there's a lot of ladies, but, that's part of the gig. Be all showboaty. So it doesn't bother me too much. A lot of these things I can't excuse. And, of course, probably nostalgia. You can call me out on that all you want, but I don't care. I enjoy it. If you enjoy it and it has nostalgia, covered goggles, it's okay. Enjoy it. Now, all the characters, all the people who played their respective roles were perfect. Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker was a perfect decision. Now, I know people get really upset nowadays because that's not necessarily how Peter Parker is in the comics. Yes, he is this goofball type person, but he does have more an edge to him. When something pisses him off, it genuinely pisses him off, and he will get mad about it. But this one kind of just, is more upset and more angry about things. Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin was freaking perfect casting. When you hear him in every scene he is in, it is just iconic. Even though he's wearing a mask, you know how much dedication that voice can do when he's putting that on, and you still feel his presence.
I chose my path, you chose the way of the hero. And they found you amusing for a while, the people of this city. But the one thing they love more than a hero is to see a hero fail, fall, die trying. In spite of everything you've done for them, eventually they will hate you. Why bother?
And speaking of, being inside the suit, I get it. The suit is not really comic accurate, and I know they have other versions when they were making it to be more comic accurate, but it would spook more kids. And I looked at them, and it looks beautiful, but it wouldn't have matched the tone or the aesthetic of the film when you compare it to Spider-Man suit, and then like if you look at the concept of what the mask would be, it looks drastically it doesn't feel like the film itself. And I know there's also I'm getting this wrong because I forgot the actor's name. The actor who played Harry, beautiful. That when I see that guy, it oozes off Harry Osborn for me. It could be just again nostalgia, but it works so well. Oh, and speaking of perfect casting in this film, we gotta talk about the one and only J.K. Simmons, who played J. Jonah Jameson so perfectly. He literally embodied that man.
Who is Spider-Man? He's a criminal, that's who he is. A vigilante, a public menace. They're crap. Crap, mega crap. I'll give you $200 for all of them. Man, I knew you two were in this together.
Hey, kiddo, let mom and dad talk for a minute, will you?
And even later on, he still plays the same character. Well, differently, but still the same character. And you know what's funny that took me a long time to really notice? That nothing he wore, the hair, the mustache, was none of his. It was just added on later on, which is funny to think about, because I legit thought that was his actual hair. His charisma, his douchebaggery, the way he's portrayed is so faithful to the comics in the best way possible. I love his role in this movie. And then we have Kristen Dunst as Mary Jane. I can never defend it. Even as a kid, I did not like her version of Mary Jane. And this was my first interpretation of Mary Jane, if you think about it. This was what my introduction of what MJ is supposed to be. Yeah, they kind of got the party girl kind of in there, and her growth is there, with the abusive parents and all that stuff is there. But it doesn't go past that. And then there's that whole situation where MJ, dates Harry, which is fine, because Harry basically becomes a douchebag and kind of takes Peter's line because Peter won't do anything. So there's that. And I know there's another thing people get really weirded out by, that Peter basically lives with Harry and doesn't have to worry about rent. But they fix it in the second movie. And then there are scenes in the movie where I love too, like in the Thanksgiving scene, where, everything is super tense, and where basically Goblin finds out that Peter is Spider-Man just by a cut, and how it was. Also, we got this iconic meme to go with that.
Hey, everyone.
Oh, Peter.
Arthur. Sorry I'm late. It's a jungle out there. I had to beat an old lady with a stick to get these cranberries.
Everything in this movie was just so well put together. And I just want to point out one thing. At the beginning, where MJ falls on Peter's, arms, where he had to hold that lunch pan with the food coming on, that was real. Because CGI would be really hard to make that, they literally did that so many times. I'll put the number here because I don't remember. But they did this many times to get to that point, which is cool. And then made me think of the actual intro. Okay, this may sound stupid, but being very little, was I the only one who thought that Peter's, webs, the silver webs he has in the suit, did anyone think they were actually the webs he made himself? This was before I knew that the webs that would only last for an hour or maybe two. I didn't know that, it would only last that much. So I just kept thinking that, hey, he actually put it in the suit and that's why it's all silvery. That was my reason. And that's why. And the reason why I thought that is because the beginning credits of the film were showing the Spider-Man, forming, and then the webs would go on his body. And that's where I thought that. I know it's just aesthetic reasons and they were making that because it was cool. And it was. But that's why I thought that it was, for the webs. That the webs were Peter's. Now, the story of Peter becoming Spider-Man at the same time when Norman becomes the Goblin is really fascinating. And that intro where Peter gets bit by the spider and that collage freaks me out to my core. And I should mention that this movie kind of was more inspired by the Ultimate comics, were like made in the 2000s, and literally the 2000s, a year before I was born. So they kind of got inspiration on the genetically altered spider instead of just a radiated spider. So that's where they got that idea.
Combining the genetic information from all 3 spiders into these 15 genetically designed super spiders.
I think that's just the best way to do the spider nowadays because, it was genetically made to be different instead of just radiation giving it an ability. I know that's kind of how most things happen. And that's what stuff I like from there that were made it into the film. Super fantastic. And I know some fight scenes in the movie kind of felt kind of Power Ranger-esque kind of thing. But hey, I love Power Rangers, so what are you going to do about it? And one thing that I would like to say that has, been in the back of my mind for so long is how in this film and all the other films, the blue, how I talked about, the restrictions caused the iconic silver webs on the red and how it was more orangey. That's why I kind of felt it was more homey. The blue. I love the blue they did. You know why? It looked like black in so many angles. And more shots, it would look more black than it was blue. And if it was looked blue, it looked more like highlights, which then looked like the comics. And yeah, it is blue. But in so much lighting, it looks black. And don't tell me that's not cool. This movie is just so cozy to watch in so many times. I know in the end, they did this message of, New York backing Spider-Man, which is a nice thing just in general for Spider-Man. But I understand the significance because of what happened literally the year before of, 9/11. They even had this commercial where Spider-Man would web up like some criminals next to the Twin Towers, and they had to cut it because of what happened. But you can actually see a shot in the movie that I like to pause many times of Spider-Man's first introduction having the Twin Towers shot in the lens, which is super cool to see. And, still kind of there because probably they shot it already. This movie was just something else for me. Not just a good movie. It was my childhood. It was literally the start of my love for anything superhero, anything Spider-Man to be exact. So, you can say it's nostalgia that makes me love this movie. It is. But what's the problem of having something you like be very nostalgia based? Again, this movie literally formed my being. I will say this, I'm not going to reveal anything on my face, but my hairstyle literally was modeled off that version of Spider-Man with the hair slicked back or sided. And because of this version of Spider-Man, I wanted glasses. I know he took them off later on when he got his powers, but that made me so badly want glasses and then immediately regret them when I actually needed them. No, it's really weird. This movie means so much to me, and I will rewatch this movie until I probably die. So that's my thoughts on the first Spider-Man movie, and I will make my thoughts on the second movie, so be careful for that. Spider-Man 2, and still as good as people say it is. Let's talk about that. Today, I want to talk about my thoughts on the original Spider-Man 2 movie. Now, I know people have praised this movie so much, and what else is there to say? And to be honest, I don't know. I just want to talk about this movie and why I love it so much. Because if you've seen my first video, you can tell how much that movie was my childhood, and this is an extension to that, so I want to talk about it. So let's get into things that I really like. First, the suit in this movie. This is a completely different suit from the first movie itself. Now, you may be asking why they had to change it. Well, first, it got stolen. I don't know why, I don't know how it got stolen, but this was back then before people were like so laser focused on checking on things now because, this is before the internet and all that stuff. So it got stolen, so they decided, you know what, let's update the suit and make it better. So they added more pattern on the suit, not just on the blue. It has more of that shape that we see in Spider-Man now on the red, which makes it look less homey, even though the original one didn't look homemade. It looked like a really expensive, but this one even looked somehow more expensive. But it still looked good. The silver was more prominent now instead of just more gray, which the first one kind of showed. So they had that. The blue has more of that shape, even more shown, which is cool. The suit is just better. Something that I really appreciate about this sequel in particular is the fact that everything progresses. A lot of times now, whenever you see a sequel, it's usually from a movie just trying to sequel bait you. It's trying to say, hey, we're going to have a sequel, so I hope you like this movie so you can watch the other one. But this one, it felt like its own contained thing. if that makes sense. Because, of course, you watch the original one, and then you watch this one, it's Spider-Man 2. But when you watch this one, it doesn't really feel like you need to watch the first one. It's so self-contained in itself. Like, yeah, you have to at least know who Spider-Man is, who MJ is, who Harry Osborn is, but not too much to really go back to, unless you're talking about, Green Goblin parts, which even then, that was small at the end. But that was still cool to show. It was so beautifully put together. And you know what? If you still want a refresher on what happened in the first movie, this movie has a perfect intro to the film with amazing imagery by the amazing Alex Ross. And this was before I even knew who that was. Even for a long time after already reading Alex Ross, I didn't know that this was him until I had to look. I'm like, well, his art looks familiar. Let me look him up. And I found out that it was him. So this is an awesome way to, introduce you to the film, while also recapping you to the first film. And of course, this movie is still cheesy. That hasn't gone away. This is 2004. And Sam Raimi cooked with this movie. It talked about so many very real things, about pain, about loss, about growing up, about letting go, even with things you want the most. And it did it in a way where anyone could understand. Take note, I was 3 years old when this movie came out. And yeah, of course, later on I had to understand it. It was still great. Now, don't get me wrong. There are still stuff in this movie that I don't necessarily like, and it all comes from MJ, to be honest. I don't like how she was basically portrayed. She still was flirting with Peter after the first movie. He said, no, let's just be friends. And Peter, of course, still being dumb and kind of being, more, I still want to be with her, but I have to be in arm's length because of my Spider-Man responsibilities. But I get it, the perspective that to her, she's seeing him being flaky. But she doesn't really talk to him about that, really, in this movie. This is what's weird to me out. If you go to that scene where they talk near their houses again, like in the first one, it's weird. You know why? Because she would try to, get him to talk. He would try to talk in his weird way. This is where the cringy parts happen.
I liked seeing you tonight, Peter.
Oh boy, yeah.
But he basically pulls back because, what he has to do. So, and then she revealed that she was already talking to a guy in the first place. I'm like, wait, hold up. So wait, if Peter had actually said yes to all your advances, you would just break up with the other guy already? That's kind of douchey in my mind. And that's just the beginning part. Literally, later on, if you've seen this movie, she literally dumps her fiance at the end for Peter at the end. And I know it's supposed to be a happy ending for Peter, but I still kind of feel sad. And honestly, it doesn't really feel right. Getting older, that's supposed to be his happy ending. But that's most of my gripes on this movie. The rest of the movie is just flawless in my mind. Well, not flawless, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, when they introduced Dr. Octavius as the new bad guy, the way they improved on him as a character, because in the original comics, he was literally just a bad guy that Peter had to fight. That's it. But then the 90s cartoon came out and made him more of a mentor. So then in this movie, they got inspiration from that, most likely, and saw him being a mentor to Peter, about his collider. And seeing Octavius being such a good guy with the wife, and if you know the backstory, you know what's going to happen. And it's sad. You're like, no. Basically like how in Spider-Man PS4 that happened, how they've been doing that more often. You're knowing it's going to happen, but you don't want it to happen. And even for newcomers, like myself at the time, I didn't know that was going to happen. So seeing him transform into Dr. Octopus was awesome and spooky. And even with the so-so or bad CGI, they mix it with some really good practical effects, which then can blur your mind into seeing that as a real thing. So I love it that in this movie, the arms that you see for Dr. Octopus whenever it's a close-up or when they don't have to really move that much, those are real. Those are actual robotic pieces that someone will be controlling in the background, actually moving them. And I think that's where the believability of Dr. Octopus was, captured better in this film than even like in the newer films where it's all CGI. And what I love is about the lesson of what your stubbornness can do to you. He didn't want to shut off the collider, and so this entire mess happened. he lost his wife and he got fused to the arms, which then shows to this part, which made me learn about Sam Raimi's horror roots with, Octavius' arms killing all the doctors that were trying to separate the arms from him. Very terrifying as a kid, which I don't know why I was allowed to watch that, but it was also cool. Toughened me up a little bit. See, and then there's so many cool scenes in this movie. Like, in the beginning, where Peter is having, to be Spider-Man and stop a crime in progress. This entire scene is like a boost of what the original movie was like. Because, there was a lot of swinging and all that stuff, but not action in the same setting. Spider-Man was literally flipping, swinging, doing all the cool stuff while trying to stop these criminals. It was just so cool. And then this specific scene, just like, I always rewind it when I was a kid. And then also in the back of your mind, you notice that he has a reservation with MJ because he was supposed to go to her play. So there's also that intense waiting. It's like, you have to be careful in that scene. And you know what else is like, really funny? Besides all the cool action we see at this part, beforehand, you see Peter just trying to go to MJ's play normally, not doing any Spider-Man stuff yet. But of course, some crime happens and he has to flip, and then his bike gets destroyed. And then that's when he realizes he has to do Spider-Man stuff. And then you see some kids going like, "How did you do that? Eat your greens, kids," which is a very funny and Spider-Man thing to do. Teach kids to eat healthy.
How'd you do that?
Work out, plenty of rest, eat your green vegetables.
That's what my mom is always saying. I just never actually believed her.
And what's interesting is you get to see the downfall of what being Spider-Man is really like for someone. He has to balance his life and it's not working at all. We get to see that. Like, Peter fails at going at his job, and then we get this amazing line from the owner, which I would repeat over and over as a kid. And probably even now. But then he fails at, being there for MJ. He fails at doing school stuff. And we see that over and over because of Spider-Man. This is something I always have to say. This is the reason why people love these movies so much. It may not be exactly aligned to the comics, but it feels like that, especially with this movie, at how much Peter has been abused in this film.
No!
I know that sounds weird to say, but it shows his progression to that. People just see the abuse, but they don't see him progressing as a character. He quits as being Spider-Man because he was losing everything. He lost his abilities. Pure depression, which is what I like to think because of the way he lost it. He lost it out of depression. And it hurts. So he had to heal himself, and he tried to push past it, to be Spider-Man for everyone else while still having what he wants. But he found out he can't. So he finds it in him to become Spider-Man again, in the weirdest place possible, because the way he talks to MJ that he can't be with her anymore because he realizes he has to be Spider-Man, it doesn't really work because MJ is really trying to push, which is really weird. This is where the weird part always happens. She's engaged to JJ's son, which is so weird.
Kiss me.
And Octavius kidnaps her, and then that's how he gets his powers back, which is really strange. I know that's where the weird stuff happens, but this is where I truly like to think that he learns to be Spider-Man better through Aunt May's words. I didn't really talk about her in the first movie because, I kind of forgot, but she is so important in this film to tell you what it means to be a hero and what it means to be there for people. And it doesn't have to relate to Spider-Man exactly, but just being you exactly, to be a hero. And the lesson always kicks me in the ass. It's always like, oh my god, I feel that so much.
I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble, and finally allows us to die with pride. Even though sometimes we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most. Even our dreams.
So this movie is just so good. It makes you cry, it makes you happy, it makes you sad. Like when Peter realized he didn't have his powers and he still had to help someone because of a burning building, like he had to look in his chest and he didn't have his suit. So it's a little showing that he doesn't have his powers. But he still went in because he realized he has to. He has to be a hero because he saw how crime has been going up. He saved the girl, but then there was someone else to save. And he realizes there's so many situations where Spider-Man was important. Spider-Man is important not just to other people, but to him and helps him, if that makes sense. This movie is a lot of lessons, to be honest. And we get the cool fight scenes too. Again, like Spider-Man versus Dr. Octopus was one of the best fight scenes I've ever seen, even to this day. CGI, not always the best, but it's still cool if you can get past it, which I do. We see Jameson being awesome. Jameson, you know how he is. I love that he almost kind of had a progression, because like when Spider-Man was gone and Jameson got, the Spider-Man suit, he was glad that, Spider-Man was gone. Haha, everything's gone. But then, when Dr. Octopus was causing so much damage, Jameson felt bad. And he was like, oh my god, this is all my fault because Spider-Man was a hero that I didn't know, that I didn't see. But then when like Peter came back for his costume, coming back as Spider-Man, Jameson goes back into being like, I want Spider-Man, just going back to being the mean guy, the one that just trashes Spider-Man again. And it was like the best, because it's like as soon as Spider-Man comes back, Jameson has to be a douche again, which is awesome. But it's kind of weird if you think about it, that Peter puts on the suit again, because if we go by the extended scene that they had for the movie, Jameson wore the costume while Peter was, not being Spider-Man. So it's weird to think about that. Jameson wore the costume as well. We get to see Tobey Maguire be Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Still great in my mind. He actually got better. Harry Osborn being a douche because he's losing it because his dad died and he saw Spider-Man do it, and he's mad at Peter for not telling him where Spider-Man is, even though, that's Peter, so you really can't, even in general. Even though I always think that, I don't know how Peter couldn't just say, Harry, it wasn't me, it was your father by himself.
Peter, you killed my father.
There are bigger things happening here than me and you.
Because by the third movie, he couldn't reason with him anymore. So I don't understand it. That's where I mean, like, some things are kind of weird even to this day. And I always got to say that, like, Robbie, the second in command to JJ, knows that Peter's Spider-Man. That's an obvious one for me, at least. And the ending message of this film is just so beautiful, that sometimes you have to let things go, as we saw with Dr. Octopus. He had to let things go with that machine because it was causing so much harm. It wasn't helping anyone, even though he was supposed to, because he was supposed to, take energy from the sun. But it just made more harm. That's it.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
What I think about a good movie can do is not just be a fulfilling movie, is giving you so much lessons, so much things to take from it that aren't just physically what you're seeing. More what I mean is that, like, the lessons actually stick with you, like being, better, rising above what you think you can and can't do, even when things hurt. And it always helped me growing up. I think it helped a lot of people with this, with that exactly, because it helped me a lot as well. When I'm angry, when I'm sad, when things are pissing me off, I would actually go and watch this movie to see everything and learn, hey, you are doing okay. You are amazing. This is what that felt for me exactly. Not just what's exactly in the film, but what it could teach you exactly. And that's why I think this movie has lived to the test of time. Like, think about it. How many years has it been since the movie came out? And it's still talked about so much? I think that's why. I want to ask you, did you like this film? Did you not like this movie? Do you think it's overrated? Do you still rewatch this movie over and over? Please let me know in the comments down below. I read all your comments and I appreciate everyone who does. And if you're still here, just know that my thoughts on Spider-Man 3 will be out next week. So this movie is such a mess, but I love it either way. And here's why. Today, I want to talk about the mess that is Spider-Man 3 and explain how I went from hating it with my core to appreciating for what it is. Now, I know this wasn't what Sam Raimi wanted to make as the third Spider-Man movie. This wasn't what he wanted. He wanted to have like the Vulture and like Mysterio in the third film, but because of studio meddling and higher-ups telling him, you gotta introduce more popular characters, which at the time was Venom because of the Ultimate Comics, they said, you have to have Venom in there. And he's like, no, I don't know the character. I don't know enough to be able to put him in. And he didn't really care about him, but he reluctantly did it. He did make Venom appear in this film. Did he want to? No, but he did what the best he could. And to be honest, for what that is, for so much meddling, this movie ended up being pretty alright. It's not a good movie, but if you just see it as a fun Spider-Man film, it takes a whole new approach to it. Because this movie still has heart. This is Sam Raimi. He made the last two films. So even a miss for him is still really good. Because this movie still had heart and soul to it. Like, one of my favorite parts of this film is the progression of Peter in this film. Like, what I love in the beginning is that Peter is shown to be happy, which is a rarity. He has everything he wants. He has fame as Spider-Man. He's good at his job. He's with MJ. He's ready to propose. Everything's going well for him. But because, you know, Spider-Man can't have too much of a happy life, bad stuff happens. And that bad stuff isn't just everything around him. This is him. Because of the arrogance that he gains from the confidence of having everything, he technically loses that. Like, they introduced Gwen Stacy in this film, but not as a traditional love interest, because I don't think Sam Raimi wanted her here. But of course, the higher-ups wanted her, so he had to figure out a way. But then we still got this cool shot of Peter ready to save her, you know, from the building collapsing. And I still love this scene no matter what. It's just so cool. And I do want to say that this suit is also different. I don't know too much about it because I wouldn't hear that either it got stolen or the fact that that's why they had to change it. Nothing like that. I just know it's different from the fact that it looks, well, different. The shapes that are usually in the suit, the textures, are more prominent. The red and blue are very much there and brighter. The silver on the suit is more pronounced. Very much silver and much better on the camera. I do want to say, what is with the mid-2000s thing of having a dark gradient around a movie? I don't get it, but it's still fun to see for at the time. And you know what? This is the first Spider-Man movie of the three that I actually remember seeing the trailer for. I was 6 when the trailer was out. You know, before the movie was actually in theaters. I never watched it in theaters because I was too young, but I remember being haunted by the trailer itself. It was too scary because they were trying to promote that Venom was in the movie, right? So when I saw it, it is burned into my mind of the fear of Venom. But later on, I still didn't like it. The reason why I didn't like it, majority, is it was too much talking. As a kid, that's boring, but later on, you hear the dialogue, and it's actually pretty good. It's cheesy, because, you know, it's Spider-Man, so it's weird, and then the fact that there was meddling kind of, doesn't help it, but it still was done okay. With the characters they have in this film, yes, it is a little overpacked, with the fact that they have, 3 different supervillains. They have Sandman, they have the New Goblin, they have Venom in this film. And to be honest, this is the movie that I think that caused people to think that too many villains equals a bad film, which I don't think it's the case. I think it's just how they put it in the movie, because the way they introduced the New Goblin, which is Harry Osborn from the last film, finding his dad's goblin stuff and getting the goblin formula, he went after Peter because he finally decided to go after him for killing his dad, which then Peter had to finally say that he did it and that Norman actually did it to himself. But of course, Harry doesn't believe him at this point.
Listen to me! I didn't kill your father! He was trying to kill me! He killed himself! Shut up!
And it happens in a very cool scene where Peter is trying to go home with a ring that Aunt May gave him for the approval that he can marry MJ, which is sweet. But the fact that Harry decides to get him there, which I always thought was the exact same thing. Whenever it showed Peter going to Aunt May, I kept thinking it was a scene after where Harry kidnaps Peter. But nonetheless, Peter is trying to protect the ring from all costs. Because it's not just a proposal ring, it's literally his aunt's ring, which at this time made me cry. And the dynamicness of the fact that he's going crazy for it is awesome. But the fact that Harry scratches Peter and it doesn't show any blood doesn't really make any sense, because the last two movies it would show Peter actually getting hurt. So I don't understand it, to be honest. And with Sandman in this film, I actually like him. He is a good villain. The only thing I don't necessarily like, and I don't think this needed to be changed, was the fact that Sandman was Peter's uncle's killer. I don't see the really need. He could just have been a good villain with, him turning into Sandman. And when they first meet, it was a fun fight scene because the CGI is still so good, especially when Sandman was being formed. As a kid, I'm going to be completely honest, I thought this was boring. Him transforming from pure sand to making his body, I thought that was boring. From the score to him just forming was just kind of boring until he turned into a full body. But later on, I'm like, oh my god, the mastery, the beautifulness of this scene is just immaculate. It's amazing. And it just gets me more nowadays. And the fact that this was 2007, the CGI still holds up to this day. It's so good. And let's talk about the actual Venom symbiote. I do like what it represented in this film. It wasn't just, just there for the sake of it. Like, Sam Raimi still had a plan, even if it wasn't portrayed great. Like, it's a good parallel that even though I don't like that Sandman killed Uncle Ben, the thing they did with it was cool. Peter is angry. Peter is frustrated that he didn't actually get the killer, which is weird. But he's so angry, he's pushing everyone away, especially like Mary Jane. He so focuses on trying to find Sandman. Sandman is so weird because Sandman is just trying to save his daughter, which was a nice change to the story for him. But it still doesn't excuse for what he did. Peter's angry. And the symbiote has been following him the entire time, feeding on the anger. And when he finally goes on him, it is so cool. It actually gives me goosebumps. It shows Peter's first time being conscious, being in the black suit. It looks like the lenses. It looks like those are actually eyes. Like when you look on the corners, it looks like a piece of red, and that makes me think of an actual eyes, side of it. And it's just cool, like if it's alive. And the score is beautiful. The upside down is amazing, but this movie didn't make it up. I thought it was that for the longest time. It actually came from Spider-Man the Animated Series show from the 90s. That's where it came from. And that's where the idea of the black suit corrupting the person, making them angrier, that's where that idea came from. Before that, there was nothing to it. It was just a black suit that took him energy. That's it. But the fact that they now make it an allegory of addiction is cool because the black suit enhances everything he has. It makes him more angrier and pissed off. The only thing I didn't necessarily like at the beginning was the fact that how they portrayed that. How the symbiote for him would make him emo, and that's where we got the famous emo Peter. And then where we got the famous dance that everyone knows, which I still love to this day. Oh, and because we're in the black suit part, I feel like I should do something real quick. If Peter gets to have a black suit, then I should have a Doodlemite variant of black suit, if that makes sense. Also, tell me what you think. But let's keep going on. Now, Peter being emo is such a funny thing, which is, I think, that's the problem with how Sam Raimi didn't understand the character well, that it would make him angry. It wouldn't make him think that he's popular or things like that, because this version of Peter, he thinks this is cool. He thinks that this is what being a douche is, and it's just weird. In a weird way, I get it, because as a nerd myself, I would think this is what being cool was at the time too. But other than all the cringe parts on that, the fact of how much this suit actually caused pain for Peter is dreadful, because when Peter wears the black suit, he was ready to kill Sandman by turning him into literal mud and, draining him through the water, literally ending him. And when Aunt May doesn't approve of that, he has to realize that the black suit is not good. But then when he realizes that, everything goes terribly for him, he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna wear the black suit again, because what the hell am I gonna do? Like, he was just done. And when he put it back on, it felt more like an addiction, because he was like, no, I need to keep wearing it. It makes me a better Spider-Man and better Peter Parker. But it shows it doesn't work. So the entire Peter being angry part of the suit is still there, mixed with the emo-ness. And I love that when he wore the black suit to fight Harry, it was just pure brutalness. He was just going at it. He was ready to kill him, and that is no. And the last straw of wearing the suit was the fact that he hurt Mary Jane. They basically broke up because Peter decided to kiss Gwen in the beginning of the film, with the upside down kiss, which is his fault, I will say. The fact that she decided to, have revenge doesn't excuse that. She literally had a make-out scene with Harry, I guess, when he had amnesia, which is a whole thing, too, to just get him out of the way, which was not a good story in that sense. But then, he gets his memory back, and then he goes after Peter, and that's how they had that fight, and he kept taunting him, and that was where the anger came from. But the fact that Peter realizes that, after, he hit MJ, I can't wear this anymore, this is terrible, and that's where we got the amazing scene of him ripping off the black suit in such a amazing way, which is also a reference to the comics, but also the animated series because of how it was put there. And then, of course, it lands on Eddie. Eddie was in this movie. I didn't really have time to talk about him, but he didn't really, I didn't really care about him, to be honest. He was obviously a parallel to Peter, but it was, But he basically turns to Venom. And when I was a kid, the transformation terrified me so badly. It actually scared me when he screamed, and I was actually like, no! But, okay, I'm gonna be honest. Okay. But since now the suit has transferred to Eddie, I should get back to my old mask. Okay, back. But one thing that I really liked seeing was the fact that Eddie, with his hatred for everything else, he wanted to be angry. And this, okay, well, the fact that he was basically trying to recruit Sandman to help him was an interesting thing, because, he came back. But I also love the fact that when Peter decides to come back as being Spider-Man, understanding all the wrong he's done, he comes out with a bang with this amazing American flag scene. And I know by this point people got annoyed with the American flag because they've been doing that since the first movie because of what happened in 9/11. So they had, unity and all that stuff. That's what the flag was supposed to be. But in this one, it's still really cool. It's not just him going on the flag or swinging past the flag. No. He's running past it and saying that he's back. And the fact that he's ready to fight Sandman and Venom together is super cool. I love it so much. And the fact that Harry decides to join in, realizing, hey, my butler decided to tell me he should get fired, that it wasn't him, it was actually my dad who did it, and he finally believes him. He's all messed up already. But he goes and helps him, and it's so fantastic because him and Peter go to save MJ in such a fantastic way. This entire fight scene was so good. I know this movie is not known to be really that well received, but when these fight scenes are put in these impactful ways, that's when the movie really kicks in for me. That's where it really wakes up for me. These are the scenes that I really like, when it's actually very much character stuff. And the fact that the end, when Venom, which I should say his design, I get people don't like, and I actually kind of do like it. I know it's weird, because it's supposedly a parallel on Peter's suit, so that's why it's the way it is. But I don't like Venom isn't really a character, it's just a monster, that's it. So the fact that Peter has to destroy it, didn't really feel that bad, except that Eddie decided to go in there. He died in the most dumb way of getting stabbed. So that was dumb. See, there's the points where the movie can't save itself from the really bad writing in these senses. You kind of can get to excuse it because of what Sam Raimi has had to do. So the fact that at the end we know that Harry's dead, and it feels like a chapter is gone because Harry has been in these films for the last 3 movies. So it still hits no matter what, at least to me. It still made me cry. And then at the end when MJ and Peter try to rekindle their relationship or whatever was going on, it's still a bittersweet moment. And I just feel that this movie has had such a bad rap, but knowing the constraints that Sam Raimi had to go through makes it more of an appreciated film because he was under constraint. He was told to do this, that, and he still turned out a good enough film. I like to think of it as if you're doing an equation for a math problem and they have to tell you have to do it this specific way, even though you're not well versed in that, but you do it anyway. It's like that for me. I still appreciate for everything this movie did. It's still so fun to watch to this day. And even with all the bad stuff in this film, with the cringy stuff, I think that kind of makes it better because, again, we get that beautiful dancing of emo Peter. You know, we get that and we get to laugh. Later on, you don't have to take this movie that seriously. It's still a fun film to watch. It's still really great to look back on. It's still a good trilogy. Yes, this one's not the strongest, but it's not going to all be perfect. So I still appreciate it. So those are my thoughts on Spider-Man 3. This movie is not perfect. It is not one of the best things ever. And it's not one of the best out of the 3. But it's still enjoyable. What do you think? Am I talking crazy? Am I being overhyped on it? Am I downplaying the bad stuff? What do you think? Did you like Venom? Did you like Sandman? Did you like the New Goblin? Let me know in the comments down below on what you thought. I read your comments and I would really like to know what you think. And if you want to see more, you can do the normal things that you do on YouTube. So, hey, this has been Dunamite, and I hope to see everyone in the next video.